Hey guys, what's up? So Rudy bought a grading company, PCG, I guess it is, since all grading companies have to have a three-letter acronym. It's actually an international treaty that decided that. So within a couple minutes of him announcing it to his patrons, I had a couple messages from some of my patrons asking me what I thought about it, what it would mean. So I thought I'd just make a video, and then I would wait for Rudy to announce it to the world before I publish the video. So I guess my initial response is kind of bafflement. Like, why? Um, I understand, like, Rudy's got more money than he understands what to do with. Like, he's been very successful, and there's no denying that. There's no denying that he's good at what he does, that he's a very successful businessman. And so I can understand him wanting to diversify his business pursuits into other things tangentially related to cards. And, obviously you don't want to go into stuff like trucking to move cards around the country because that's just a horribly competitive business. And you don't want to become a wide-reaching distributor that services all retailers. You don't really want to do that. He has his own kind of distribution thing going on already with a limited customer base. And so I guess owning a grading company is a way to do that. But like I said, my initial reaction is bafflement. Like, why? Um, and in his announcement, he said a couple of things that were interesting. He said that he wanted to bring consistency and accuracy and fairness to grading. And obviously, the big grading houses for the past 3 years have had incredible problems. I mean, there was a time with PSA where you you could not go more than a day without a big YouTube channel posting a complaint video about receiving the wrong order, receiving someone else's order, their order going to someone else. I mean, there was a time period where PSA just absolutely could not figure out how to send people their actual orders back. And it was screwed up. And there were issues where people were, six-figure cards were getting sent to the wrong place. And it's like, yeah, good luck unfucking that. And so, PSA, BGS, all the rest of them, they have had incredible problems over the last couple of years because there's been such a flood of people wanting to grade cards. So many people coming back to these hobbies in the last couple of years, grading itself taking off in the last couple of years, and then just Pokemon collectors are crazy. And so there are a huge number of Pokemon collectors who just take newly printed boxes, crack them, and send the entire box in for grading. And so the desire from the market for grading has far outpaced its ability to provide grading services for several years now, and that's only now starting to come under control maybe in the last, say, 6 to 12 months. And so finally, backlogs have been cleared out. Prices have started to come down a little bit, but bulk prices are higher than they were, say, prior to 2020, and they're probably never going back to those old 2020 bulk prices of $7 or $8 a card. I think PSA today is $15 a card for bulk. So there's no doubt that the companies have had huge problems in the last couple of years. And one of those problems that goes along with all the rest of that is inaccurate grading, all kinds of shenanigans with insider dealing, with grading companies basically grading their buddies' cards, grading their employees' cards, grading their owners' cards, and lo and behold, they get really good grades when they do that. And so there have been incredible problems. When it comes specifically, though, to accuracy and consistency, I am going to propose that the problem of accuracy and consistency in grading is not a problem with PSA or BGS or any of the other three-letter companies, and it is not something that PCG can fix unless they do one specific thing. So first, let me outline the problem. The problem with accuracy and consistency in card grading is that humans do it. And humans are really bad at things. We have bad days, we have emotions, and we are not consistent machines that try to deliver the same output every time. And so you can have situations where, let's say a card grader had a fight with his wife last night. So he's in a bad mood today, and on average he might give a half point to 1 point worse grade to every card over the whole course of the day. Or let's say that a card grader, his wife got up earlier with him this morning and they had sexy time and he's in a good mood, and so he'll give every card a half point or a whole point better grade all day long. And we've done studies on similar things in psychology. We've shown that when daylight savings rolls the clock forward and everybody has to get up an hour earlier tomorrow morning than they did yesterday morning, and everybody is 1 hour sleep deprived, if you are getting sentenced for a crime on that morning, there's a statistically measurable increase in the length of sentences on that day because judges are in a worse mood because they had 1 hour less of sleep. And now when we talk about card grading, nobody really thinks that card graders who are making $10 or $12 or $15 an hour are really taking their jobs so seriously as judges might. And so the card graders, they literally have 30 seconds, 45 seconds to look at your card and give it a grade and to subjectively give a grade. So the accuracy problem is because humans are involved and humans are doing it. The consistency problem is because these are low-paid employees doing unskilled labor. And so the turnover is going to be just like a lot of low-skilled jobs. Turnover will be very high. And so let's say you had a bunch of cards and you submitted them to PSA in 2010, and you have another batch of those cards today in 2023 and you submit them, you should expect wildly inconsistent results because probably almost every one of the graders who was there in 2010 is no longer there. It's completely different people. And so over time, the process at the company, the standards are going to drift no matter how they try to control that. Now, there's one way you can alleviate that. Like I said, you can have machines do it. And back in, say, 2021, there was a company called Hybrid Grading Approach. And apparently they're still around. I went and looked them up. And their whole thing was we're going to take ultra high resolution photographs of every card, and then we will have a machine determine the grade. And that's great. That's what a lot of people want from grading. They want to take the human out of the loop. They want no more subjectiveness from the human, and they want a machine to measure it. Now, if you think about card grading, you have your four things. You have centering, surface, corners, and edges, right? And so centering obviously is the most easy to convince people it should be an objective measure. You should be able to measure how off-center, left and right, and up and down, and then left and right and up and down on the reverse of the card something is, and you should be able to give it a score very objectively. Now, I will say the rest of the criteria you grade cards on can also be measured objectively. You simply must decide on the criteria. And so if you took an ultra high resolution picture of the card, and let's say you hit it with a laser scanner, so you had a 3D model of the front of the card, so you could actually measure things like dents and chips and edge wear and corner deformation and things like that, well, you could have a criteria that says you are allowed to have this much length of scratches on the surface of the card and still score a 9 or a 10 or an 8 or whatever. You're allowed to have this much chipping, chipping that goes this deep and this many chips and this wide of chips and things like that. You are allowed to have corner deformation that is up to such a percentage of surface area of the corner. And you could establish objective criteria of that and then simply have a machine measure it. And like I said, I think that's what a lot of people in grading want. They want to take the human out of the loop. And then you would get accuracy and you would get consistency. Because as long as the company would not make the decision to go in and change those objective criteria of what rates as an 8 or 9 or a 10 or whatever, then you could resubmit the same card in the future and you should get the exact same grade. And so unless PCG is going to move towards that in the future, I think they cannot fix the inconsistency and the inaccuracy problems in grading. As long as you plan to have humans doing the grading, you cannot fix those problems. And things like auditing and quality control programs can only go so far when it's humans doing the thing. Now, let's take another example. Let's say you're a machine shop and you make parts. You're just a random nobody aerospace machine shop making parts for the aerospace industry, and you have a contract to provide 10,000 of these widgets every month. And so you set up a 5-axis CNC machining center, and you set it up and you have it cranking out those parts all day long. and you have a quality control program. And every 100th part that comes off the line goes to your qual lab, and you look at it and you do all the measures on it, and you do the hardness tests, and you do all the rest of the things, and you assess that it meets the specifications of the contract. So in that way, when you have a process that is controlled iteration to iteration, you can set up a quality program that can ensure consistency. But when your process is a human who has 30 to 45 seconds to look at a card and determine 4 scores and assign it a grade, then you are not going to have that kind of consistency because the machine performing the process is not consistent. And so now, I have no idea, maybe PCG and maybe Rudy. I mean, I know that both of them, just PCG as a business and Rudy as a businessman, will have ideas. They've got a bunch of ideas in their head of places they want to take the company. I mean, you should expect that they do. They have a bunch of ideas for places they want to go, how to get there, services and products to offer, etc. And so, unless completely automated machine grading is somewhere on the roadmap down the line, you will never fix the problem of inconsistency, inaccuracy, and unfairness in the grading. Okay, so that's really the main problem I see with that, and we're never going to get past it as long as we have humans in the loop grading. The second big problem that baffles me about buying a grading company is I looked out on PCG's website and their POP report. I think it only shows various TCG cards, and it shows a lifetime POP report size of 40,000 graded cards. And if you go out and you look on PSA and you just drill down to their TCG section, you don't take their sports card and everything else they grade, because they grade all kinds of stuff. You just take TCG cards, it's 10.5 million cards. And so that's what, 25 times 10, 250 and some more, 260 times as many cards, TCG cards, PSA has graded as PCG has graded. And something I talk about a lot with my patrons and on videos is the network effect and the value of a network, and how a network gets more valuable as it has more nodes in it. And it's why I make arguments that Magic will continue to be the most valuable and the most popular TCG in North America and worldwide for decades to come. It has the most cards in existence, the most players, the most collectors, investors, the most distributors, the most expansions, the biggest card library, the best rules, the most keywords, all these things that each one of those makes every one of those things more valuable. And when it comes to POP reports of grading houses, the POP report is its own network. And the size of that network makes itself more valuable. And the reason for that is that dealers will look at things like comps. They'll look for things like just having faith that a company does a good job over time of grading, that the slabs are worthwhile, that the company is not too lenient on its grading, because there definitely are some of the smaller name grading houses that are just 10 mils, you might call them. I mean, you send them cards and almost everything will get a very high grade and a good chance of a 10. And it's for people who just want something in a slab with a 10 on it, even if it's, even if, say, PSA would grade it a 6 or a 7. There are those places out there. And so having a reputation established through the size of the population report and through a history has huge value. And so that will be an uphill climb for PCG to establish themselves when, to date, they claim 40,000 cards, and PSA has graded 10.5 million TCG cards. And it goes beyond that, because PSA's population report of non-TCG cards adds to the network value of the population report of TCG cards, because it further establishes PSA as an authority, as a place that has maybe some level of consistency, maybe as something that people trust. Their operations are reasonable and you're pretty likely to get your cards back, things like that. And so it's a huge uphill climb for a new grading company to come into the scene and say, we're going to get started with a population report today starting at 40,000 cards. Now, it's not insurmountable, and definitely there are a lot of people where if Rudy says, hey, I own this place, I'm going to straighten out grading. It's going to be a good place you can trust to get graded. And definitely if he does the stuff he's talking about with the tags in the slabs, people will love that. And there are a lot of people who will definitely go grade there. It's a matter of how quickly they can bring up those population report numbers. And it's going to be an uphill climb. It's not insurmountable. But it's another one of those things that makes me, when I heard that Rudy had bought a grading company, just kind of say, why? Because, I mean, it's a huge problem, and you have to climb uphill against the big boys for a long time. There are channels out on YouTube who do weekly roundups of PSA pop report changes, and you can go and see them, and you can see how many cards PSA is grading every week. And I'm not going to throw a number out there because it's been a long time since I've looked at one of those, but I want to say it's something like 50 or 80 or 100,000 cards every week PSA grades. But go find one of those. Don't trust my number. But it's going to be difficult to scale that operation and get there. Now, one other difficulty that's really going to make this hard is something Rudy mentioned was PSA had become too expensive. And yes, for high value cards, PSA is very expensive. For Rudy's company, PCG, right now their grading prices on their website only vary based on how fast you want your card back. They don't charge you more to grade more expensive cards like PSA does. But for the bulk price, it's still the same $15 that PSA is. Yeah, PSA has a $99 a year subscription thing. To get that price, that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of grading a lot of cards. It amortizes over a bunch of cards if you're serious about grading a bunch, and it doesn't significantly add to the cost. But, again, the reason that humans are so bad at it is because the company is only charging $15 a card and therefore can only afford to spend 30 to 45 seconds grading the card. And if PCG is going to charge the same amount, and in fact claim that they're going to charge less, claim that PSA has become too expensive and PCG will charge less, where are you going to find the money to let people spend more time on cards in order to be accurate and consistent and fair? Okay, so like I said, I don't know the inner machinations of PCG. I don't know the ideas they have for growing their business, offering new products, new items, new services, everything. I don't know what Rudy has in mind either. And hopefully there are a lot of good ideas. Hopefully one of those ideas is putting all of the card graders out of work because you got machines to take over the entire process. Hopefully. Let me know what you think, guys. Maybe there's some really good reason to do this, but maybe I'm just not creative enough to come up with it. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join the Funnel Trade. Join the Patreon.